User data can be dynamically captured and created as a user profile during bot conversations. Further data captured in subsequent bot conversations across multiple channels can also be updated in the existing user profile. This can be achieved in the Flow Builder section of the Studio module. We use different prompt nodes in flows to allow users to input data in response to a question or a statement. This data can be stored in user properties. These values stored in user properties in a flow for identified users automatically get updated in the platform. If the value to be stored in a user property is available in another variable or in a complex data type, the required value to be stored in the user property has to be parsed. This can be done using a modifier node in the builder or by writing code. The value obtained after parsing can then be stored in the user property using the variable's action node. User data captured in user properties using the builder section reflects in User360 only for identified users, that is, users for whom the UserID is set. We can make sure that the user is always identified during a conversation by setting one of the captured values as a UserID, along with the existing user property. This is useful when an existing unique property needs to be used as a UserID. In this flow, we are prompting the user to enter the full name. We then store this input in a variable. We can use the modifier action node to split the user's full name into the first name and last name. Use spaces as the delimiter. This will return an array of strings which can be stored in the first name and last name user properties. We then prompt the user for the email ID and store it in the email user property. Email can be captured as a unique property for a user. Select the email prompt node and click on Make Prompt Smarter. Enable the checkbox to use this input as a unique ID for the user. Other user data can be collected during the conversation and stored in relevant user properties. Let us trigger this flow and provide a few user details to the bot. We see that the captured values has been created as a record in User360. The email ID has also been captured as the user ID of the user. Let us look at another flow to update user data. We prompt the user for their email ID and we also capture this as the user ID. We add a couple of prompts to capture the username and the phone number. To highlight the difference between a user property and a variable, we store the name input in a variable and the phone number in a user property. On triggering this flow, let us try to update the details of a user who is already captured in User360. We see that only the phone number of the user is updated and not the name. Only inputs stored in user properties in the builder would affect the user data in User360. A conflict can occur in the process of identifying a user when they appear across multiple channels. Since the user is identified through a common UserID property across all channels, chances are that a profile for the user already exists on the platform. However, the other properties defining the user property might be different in subsequent conversations. There might also be cases when a certain property of the identified user was not available earlier and is captured at a later stage through a different source or channel. In such cases of conflicts, the captured user data is seamlessly merged with the existing user profile in the platform. The same merging strategy is followed in case of a user conflict arising during a CSV import. In cases where the value was not available earlier, the newly captured value is updated in the existing user profile against the corresponding property name. Properties provided for the new record will be overwritten on the older record. Properties that are not provided for the new record will be retained for the older record. In this demo, we will demonstrate how user data is captured and merged seamlessly through multiple channels. Let us trigger the Update User Data flow in the WebBot. We will enter the email ID of a user who is already captured in User360. The user is recognized based on their captured user ID. The phone number of the user is updated in User360 as well. User recognition will happen irrespective of the channel on which the user is interacting with the bot. Let us trigger this flow on WhatsApp now. The same user ID is entered again and we can see that the details captured for this user in the flow is updated against the same user record in User360. From the same device, let us trigger the Update User Data flow. This time, let us provide the user ID of another user from User360. We can see that the details captured in the flow are updated against the new user record in User360. We have a CSV file with user data. Some of the users in this file already exist in User360. The user in row 2 of the CSV has a phone number in the phone user property which currently does not exist in the User360 table. The user in row 3 of the CSV contains many properties whose values match with a certain record in User360. However, the user ID for these two records are different. Another record has been added in the CSV which matches the user ID that we have just seen in User360 for the above scenario. This record has a different set of user values. Let us now upload this data into User360 and see how this conflict is handled. After the import is complete, we can see that the users present in row 2 and 3 of the CSV are merged into existing records in User360. The user properties are taken from the CSV and the existing properties are overwritten if found to be different. The user in row 4 of the CSV is created as a new user since the user ID did not exist before.